When are you getting married? Is a question that can be asked in 67 different ways. I know, I have counted, I have categorized, I have analyzed and divided them into 9 basic emotional ways. The alarm, my God, you're so cynical, you're never going to get married, are you? The angry, if you're so picky, when can you expect to get married? The bribing, don't you wish for your own husband and house to manage? The concerned, sweetheart, isn't it time for you to get married? The curious, how come you're not married yet? Something wrong with you? The demanding, so when are you inviting us for your wedding dinner? The pitying, oh you poor thing, when will you go shopping with your fiancé for a diamond necklace? The romantic, you will find the one someday, right? And finally, the zany, it's okay to come out of the closet, we will not judge. When it started being asked, like any good skill, my parents coached me in responses by example. Jokes, abrupt answers, blank stares, more jokes. Standard answer of not yet were my training wheels. Sneakily though, the question started being asked in my house by my parents themselves. So beta, should we put a matrimonial ad for you in the newspaper? Or, beta, this community matrimonial service has contacted us. Should we put up your profile there? Quickly turning into, be home by 6, we have to go meet that boy. And for God's sake, if not your own, learn to put on some makeup and behave like a girl. I admit the last hurt. After so many years of being told I'm just like a son and can do anything from dissect a human body at age 17 and advise 50-year-old on sex at age 21, this is while I was being training to be a doctor. I don't randomly give advice to 50-year-olds on sex. So I don't even know what behave like a girl meant. For my dissertation on that subject, take an appointment because 5-minute conversation isn't going to be enough. All the advertisements in the newspaper and recommendations of a good boy by aunties, my parents still weren't able to marry me off. They consulted with all the family members, and invariably some uncle would find something wrong with a guy under consideration. To be clear, I cooperated the best I could and gave in to their more reasonable demands, some of which included fasting only on water for 3 days, going to a temple 6 hours drive away, and joining a seniors laughter club because, who knows, some uncle or auntie may like me for a daughter-in-law. As time went by, the matrimonial action waxed and waned in our house, eventually dulling to a background murmur. In the meantime, I managed to go to Yale for my master's, live and travel by myself, take over responsibilities of the house after my dad's passing, and establish a career I could be proud of. And no, I truly did not meet the person I wanted to marry. Then, when I hit a certain milestone, I won't define which one, I decided it was time I did get married. Having only ever experienced the route of matrimonial agencies and newspapers to find the right match, I did the 21st century version of it. I put up my profile on a matrimonial website and stepped into a surreal world. I completely understood what Alice must have felt like falling down that rabbit hole. Either I was too big, polite version of saying I'm too fat, or I was too small, polite version of saying you're too short. I was too educated or not rich enough. Oh, you're in India. I thought you had a green card. And from the guys in the US, oh, you're in India. You never told me you didn't have a green card. Never was there a door I could walk through just the way I was. I went from bewildered to bemused to plain amused pretty quickly. Yet, I did not take my profile offline being optimistic that maybe there is a soul out there like me who doesn't know any other channel of finding a person he wanted to marry. One day, I get a call at 8 pm. A polite hour, not too early, not too late. There was no number listed on the caller ID. I debated whether to pick it up and decided what the heck, I've never gotten a call from an unlisted number before. A rich, deep voice politely wished me good evening, promptly introduced himself as Atul Sharma. He gave the reference of the matrimonial site and asked if it was a good time to talk. That in itself was such a pleasant change from the usual calls from that site that I found myself encouraging conversation. We talked for a correct 10 minutes and ended it pleasantly with a pledge to talk some more the day after. Lo and behold, I got a call exactly at the time he had promised, and this time the call lasted much longer. Our conversations got a little longer with each subsequent call and a little more detailed about our lives and family, hopes and dreams. He was easy to talk to, intelligent, articulate. He was an Indian-born US citizen, a space engineer working for NASA, loaned out to DARPA in Boston. He had a 4-bedroom waterfront house right off Memorial Drive in Cambridge. I googled it immediately, of course, while we were talking. He had been busy with his education and career, just like me, too busy to find somebody to marry. He had put up his profile on the matrimonial site because he was optimistic that maybe there is some girl out there who has no other channel of finding the right person to marry. He had a well-stocked library. And yes, Shakespeare and Sherlock Holmes were his favorite reads, just like me. He could hold a conversation about space engineering as well as the latest Wimbledon matches and rules. He complimented me on my witty slogan t-shirt I was wearing in a photograph before he complimented me on my pretty eyes. It was wonderful. It was like talking to someone custom made to my preferences. Of course, he had a past. Doesn't everyone of a certain age? He had dated a Pakistani girl who was at university with him, who is now a politician, famous for her good looks and her Birkin handbags. No names. Things didn't work out because her family insisted that he move to Pakistan. Sounded a little far-fetched to me, but I ignored it. It is possible, is it not? We all embroider and embellish our pasts and decorate it, don't we? I still hadn't met him. He was in Boston, I'm in Bangalore. But after a month of long conversations on the phone, he announced he would be coming to India shortly for a 6-month project to work with a space program in India. Some sort of joint program with the US government. We would finally get to meet. I went into a pleasant tizzy, planning my travel to Mumbai, where he would be based. I accidentally on purpose overlooked the fact that the space program in India is conducted from Chennai, not from Bombay. He said he'd let me know when he would have some time off after coming to India, as he wanted to spend exclusive time with me without distraction or work. So I booked an open ticket, gave a heads up at work that I might take a few days off. Final dates pending. I won't say I had rose-colored glasses on yet, but they were definitely clutched in my hand, ready and waiting. The almost daily phone calls stopped abruptly. After 3 weeks, I get a call from him again, this time on an Indian mobile number. He was in India. He was so very sorry to have slipped off the radar, but he was making preparations for the 6-month stint in India. And DARPA had him traveling on a federal plane because of terror threats. Secret mission, delicate strategic position. He could not let me know when he was flying. He was in Mumbai right now, and he really, really wanted to meet me. But he could not predict when he would get time off. Could we still converse on the phone in the meantime? He pleaded so prettily and was so very contrite. I was like, yeah, why not? I guess we can talk. And I had his number, so I could call up anytime I wanted. Another fortnight went by. He bitterly described his Indian project mates, his daily struggles with the lack of basic technology needed for a good space program. He kept flying off to Delhi to meet his famous politician uncle, since retired. He described his ancestral house in Lucknow, which his other uncle had laid claim to but actually belonged to him. He bemoaned the family feud that resulted and made him want to move to America. Since, like all families, our family had feuds too, I completely could relate and empathize with his stress. The rose tinted glasses stayed gripped in my hand. I still hadn't told my family anything about this man and was planning a meeting before deciding anything. After another week, he told me he was getting a fantastic deal for a piece of prime real estate courtesy of the defense personnel quota, and it was to be developed as a gated community very close to the projected airport just outside of Mumbai. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could invest there for a house? It was almost at a throwaway price too. He had a limitation of how much he could invest because he was not an Indian citizen. The shortfall was about 15 lakhs. The title deed for one of the parcels of land would be in my name. I considered it, but it was a moot point for me because I didn't have that much money to invest. And I honestly told him so. He was disappointed, sure, but quickly apologized for even thinking of asking me. After all, he was a man, and he saw it as his duty to take care of me and my family. He would ask his uncle to invest. I was not to worry my head. One of the title deeds would still be in my name. I again apologized and reiterated the fact that I genuinely did not have the money to invest. And he in turn begged forgiveness for asking me something like this, since we hadn't even met yet. And of course, I would not know him that well to trust him with the money even if I did have it. Still, in his opinion, it would have been nice if I had shown some commitment to building a trusting relationship with him, as he was doing. A week later, my office planned a very opportune meeting for me in Mumbai, just before a long weekend. I was thrilled. So we arranged to meet at ITC Grand Maratha for dinner Friday night. For those of you who know ITC Grand Maratha, it's a beautiful 5-star heritage hotel with Michelin star restaurants and the suites running there like $1,000 a night. And he was booked into a suite for 6 full months that he was going to be in India. I was impressed. On Friday, I walked into the lobby at 8 p.m. as decided and went up to the receptionist and confidently asked her to call up the room to let him know that I was waiting in the lobby. She very naturally asked me the room number. I, of course, didn't have it. I just assumed that he's going to be there for 6 months and she would know who he is. She very firmly said she could not confirm or deny any guests staying in the hotel, and if I were to get in touch with him myself, that would work out fine. After 5 minutes of fruitless argument, I did just that. Called up on his cell phone. The response of the cell phone was endless rings, interrupted by "this phone is being switched off." After 15 minutes of trying, I was equal parts concerned and annoyed. What was I supposed to do with him in his room and me in the lobby and not able to get in touch with him? My pet bugbear is being stood up. I hate that, and I hate doing that to others as well. So I hung in there, another 10 minutes for calling. He finally picked up the phone. Again, apologies ensued. He was actually returning from a meeting and was stuck in traffic with a bad signal zone. He asked me to hang around the lobby and promised that he would be there as soon as he could. I didn't like it, but I exhaled and calmed myself down. 45 minutes later, an almost unrecognizable version of his photograph walked into the lobby. It took me a full minute of scanning his scruffy, unkempt, long-haired, full face to recognize him as the same as the slim, tall, clean-shaven guy in ski gear that I was led to expect. He walked up to me and wished me. At least his voice was the same. A few minutes of apologizing later, he asked me to wait and walked up to the reception. A brief conversation, flirting with the receptionist, picked up his key card, invited me up to his room. Now, all said and done, I am an Indian girl. I refused. He insisted. I refused a little more. I must confess, got a little rude. Finally, after laying a guilt trip on me for not trusting him at all, even after meeting me, he just took me to this exclusive lobby meant for people living in the suite. Walked up to the barkeep, told him to take care of me, and walked into his room. I was in two minds by that time. I was like, was I being foolish, just being so doubting? This guy is genuinely being nice to me. I had this heated debate all by myself in my head, just like Alice. With her mushroom, I picked up my whiskey and one sip this side, one sip that side. Should I be doubting? Should I not be doubting? Finally, growing sometimes taller, sometimes shorter, until I succeeded in bringing myself down to size. After about half an hour, we went back. We came out and we went to an elaborate Lucknowi dinner. My conversation started was about movies and whether he liked Hollywood or Bollywood. Turned out neither. I casually mentioned that my favorite rom-com was How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. But it drew a blank from him. He started talking about work and what I would do in the US as a career path. I brought up the theatre scene in Boston, and he extolled the virtues of the investment project again and told me how great he was and how we could go see the land the next day if I wanted to. About how for measly 15 lakhs I would get assets worth millions in my name for me to do with whatever I wanted. I talked about how I wished to get married right away. How I always wanted a big family and my entire extended family close by, and a brood of kids kicking the football around in the big front yard. And the fact that biological imperative demanded that I have kids right away. In fact, I babbled on about how I dreamt of being a homemaker after I got married and was ready to give up my career as soon as that happened. How I would love my mother to live with me. And my sister's family too. One big happy family. Sans the mother-in-law, of course. His response? His top secret space mission had him on medications that made him impotent. And sterile. With no chance of recovery. And for 15 lakhs I could buy my mom a wonderful big house just outside of Mumbai. In a secure gated community full of retired military big shots, no less. In fact, if I wished for another 10 lakhs, he would get me a third piece of land for my sister too. I gushed over him for being so considerate about my family and told him I would love to go see the project the next day. In fact, I would invite my lawyer uncle and my brother along too. Anyway, he had to meet my family. I reassured him that it didn't matter to me that he was sterile. We could always adopt like Anthony and Julie, one kid from each country we traveled to. Now I could see the sweat build up on his forehead. I asked him very sweetly if he was alright and why he was turning so pale. His effort to look relaxed was so transparent. I thought you lived with your mom and didn't really have a big family. You never mentioned a lawyer, uncle, or a brother who works in the CBI, or the fact that I would have to meet them. I replied I was very close to my family and their opinion about major life-changing decisions like marriage were important to me. And we should decide on a time to meet the next day and go see the project. In fact, if possible, we should go to Delhi and meet with his uncles and see if he could get his ancestral property back since my uncle was a lawyer. It was, of course, very natural for him to get a work call just then. which precluded further conversation and brought the dinner to a close as he had to go and attend an emergency in his project. He was so very sorry to do this to me, and he would definitely make up for it the next day. Of course, the phone was switched off the next day. And it was no surprise to me to read an article in the Times of India a week later about a man arrested for defrauding a widow of 25 lakhs, promising her marriage and then asking her to invest in this great project for a gated community just outside Mumbai. Yet, just like Alice, I still wander into the surreal world of matrimonial websites once in a while. To talk of many things, of shoes and ships and sealing wax, of cabbages and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings. Thank you.